Today I will present the analysis of the authorial choices of the text. One is a science paper named Called Out, and the other one is an argument called Hope for the Animal and the World. The relationship between these texts is that both of them talk about nature and how humans seek to preserve it, as it is important for the survival of all life in the middle of the planet. Developing like this an interaction between humans and nature, and this motivates the reader to value it and take care of it. First, I'm going to talk about the first text, which is a science paper. With its analysis of the authorial choices like the style that has word choice, sentence structure, content and tone. And this text talks about that thanks to the heavy rains that occurred in the year 1998, caused by the Niños phenomenon, the germination of wildflowers in the Arizona desert was abandoned as a subject of research for scientists who were able to observe it and admire it. The first reference that I will provide will be the word choice found on page 51, lines 2 to 4, and it says, while nearly everyone else on the planet was cursing the soggy consequences of El Niño's downpours, here in southern Arizona we were cheering for the show. This reference is a word choice because soggy talks about the fact of a huge quantity of water and can be replaced by inundated. In addition, this impacts the reader because this word is not a technical term but an informal one. And this allows the audience to have a degree of comfort while reading, and also the language is simple and used normally, so it attracts and brings the reader closer to their daily life. By using the word soggy instead of inundated, it is possible that the reader can enjoy a connection on an emotional level where the five senses are exercised. The second reference is about the devices, where it's found on page 51, line 6, and it expresses. Our mountains were models of yellow brittle bush on their rocky shoulders. This reference talks about that there are like many plants on the mountain, and is a personification because it gives human characteristics to the mountain, saying that it covers its shoulders with a yellow brittle bush. While analyzing this reference, it can be seen that it impacts the reader, because through this personification, it makes the reader like capture more ideas in a clearly way, as more vivid actions by non-human entities are being described, generating attraction and emotional reactions, affection for these non-human characters. The author wanted to compare nature in a normal and universal way, and we can suppose, for example, that a grandmother who covers a part of her body with a cloak could be sentenced like in this place, but he also, or the writer could also have used a comparison of the glare that the sun can generate in the mountains. Now coming to the third reference is about sentence structure, and I will analyze it from the length of the sentences. And this is found on page 53, lines 57 to 60, and also page 52, lines 28 to 30, and it says, many people aren't aware that the desert blooms at all, even in a normal year, and few will guess how much effort we devote to waiting and prognosticating. The other reference is, the flower show is really about making seeds, and the object of the game is persistence through hell or high water, both of which are features of the Sonoran Desert. These references talk about the germination of the wildflowers. Regarding the length of the sentences, it can be established that these are long because the text presents two or more sentences separated by the comma punctuation mark. This process allows the reader to experience a degree of comfort and clarity in the message that the writer wants to convey, since it allows to obtain great details in the information. In addition, with these references, the reader can feel a degree of satisfaction while obtaining more important elements for their intellectual growth. The next element to analyze is the content and is found on page 54, lines 74 to 76, and it says, desert wildflowers have had millennia in which to come to terms with their inconstant mother. Once the plant has rushed through growth and flowering its seeds, wait in the soil and not just until the next time conditions permit germination, but often longer in any given year, as a subset of a species needs don't germinate, because they are programmed for a longer dormancy. This reference makes a synthesis of the content of the text, since it talks about the germination of flowers or wildflowers in the desert. This being like the main theme of the science essay, allowing to create awareness in the reader about the importance of nature for the human being. Finally, according to the element of analysis of the tone, it is informative and is found on page 52, lines 39 to 49, and it says, well then, our non-biologist friend struggled to frame her question. If they were in their last year and this year they are, then who planned them? What a fuzzler! God planted them. We glance each other nervously, a picturesque response indeed from scientifically trained types, like ourselves. Yet it seemed more compelling than any pedestrian lecture on life cycles and latency periods. Where had they all come from? Had these seeds just been lying around in the dirt for decades? And how was it that, at the behest of some higher power and the calendar, all at once there came a crowd? 3. Through this reference and the informative tone that develops during the text is evident, as it points out some facts and makes descriptions in a clear, simple, and picturesque way, sharing information and important data from the observation of nature. By the writer achieving that all classes of readers are interested in the theme even more when the reasons that it offers provide explanation to the unknown. The author could have used a journalistic tone, where the only focus is on aspects of relative importance, but it is well known that the constant use of adjectives and details that the informative tone uses make it interesting and entertaining. I'm not talking about the second text. I will be analyzing the same elements as we called out, and the text is called The Hope for Animals and the World, and it talks about the beetles and the importance of them in the ecosystem. The first reference will be a word choice found on page 63, line 70 to 75, and it says, one reason for the species' precipitous decline across its historical range, in addition to habitat loss and fragmentation, is possibly connected with the extinction of the passenger pigeon and the greatly reduced number of blackfoot, turrets, and polar chickens, all of which provide carrion of ideal size. This reference is a clear example of a word choice because the word precipitate emphasizes on the great speed that the decline of the species presents, using simple but relevant terms, allowing the reader through formal language to feel comfortable but well informed with the reading they are reading. It was replaced by another term such as fast because the writer wants to captivate the reader's attention and at the same time allow him or her to capture the feeling of the speaker with the words usually uses. And now going to the second reference is about the devices, where it's found on page 64, lines 4 to 7, where it says, and this really blew my mind. The young girls will extract the mandibles of their parents to engage feeding, and the adults will recruitate food for the young. 3. This reference talks about the feeding of the beetles and is a literary device of hyperbole. It's evident by showing an exaggeration on the part of the narrator when talking about the mind-blowing and creating an impact of expressiveness and surprise in the reader by allowing him or her to better dimension the feeling of the writer. It can be said or analyzed that the writer used hyperbole and not a comparison, because with an exaggeration, the reader can notice and feel the intensity of what is being expressed, influencing the emotions and mood of the reader. And now talking about the third reference is about sentence structure, and I will analyze it from the length of the sentences. And this is found on page 65, lines 45 to 48, and page 64, lines 35 to 39, and it says, "My son was fascinated as a little boy to watch ants as they set out in an orderly column to raid a termite nest and return each blaring and unfortunate victim in its mandibles. After a while, birds such as crows and seagulls began to recognize that an orange flag represents a food source and began to dig up the beetle's carrion, so the recovery team is now also placing a mesh screen over each brood to protect it." As for the length of the sentences, these are long because of the presence of the commas, allowing the reader to have like pauses and achieving like this an enjoyable and interesting reason as detailed and complete information is received, and like on the reader that is interested in them. It can be said that the narrator used more long sentences than short ones, because when we need like more details, the reader can feel like more attracted and like these have a total knowledge. The next element to analyze is the content, where a reference is found on page 65, lines 50 to 64. It says, "The American boring beetle is the largest member of its genus in North America. It is sometimes called the giant Karen beetle. Once these beetles lived in forest and scrub grassland habitats, any place where there was carrion of a suitable size and soil suitable for marine need. In 35 states through the temperate eastern North America, but by 1920, populations in the east had largely disappeared." 3. In this reference, a clear and detailed summary of the content of the text is evident. Because in general, it talks about the American boring beetle with their habitat, and it points out one of the many causes that threaten their survival. Finally, I will talk about the tone. It is assertive and is evident, and it is found on page 66, lines 159 to 166, and it says, "Unfortunately, Lou finds it much harder to interest adults in the efforts being made to save the American barn beetle. So often, the first question he told me is, will it eat my garden? If only people would take the time to listen, retain the curiosity and wonder of childhood, how much richer their lives will be." 3. In this reference, the tone of the text is evident as an assertive one, because when expressive itself with informal language, a personal point of view in a simple and persuasive way is shown. Also, the narrator radiates confidence and impacts the reader, generating the desire to maintain like child curiosity, with the objective of giving the importance and the beneficial value of it being in the midst of nature. And also, it can be said that the writer like uses this tone and not like other one, because of its possibility of persuasion to the reader. Thank you.